stories, but larger issues of leadership. So it was really a wonderful, wonderful project. I really love doing it.
Well, that's great.
You'll see a few things starting to pop up on your screen about going live stream, and
we are going live on Facebook right now.
So just want to let you know. So
I'm
7 o'clock. So don't want to keep our main event folks waiting.
Should I press got it where it says leave meeting or got it?
No, you're good. Just
okay.
Don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything.
It'll go away.
Yeah, we're gonna start adding folks to the meeting, so you might see some familiar faces popping up in our Zoom Brady Bunch kind of screen format here.
Okay.
And we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight for our Race and Sports Oral History Project update with Garwin DeBerry and Steve Runkle. We are going to give it a few more minutes to let some other people log on. So in the meantime, I'm just going to make a few announcements. But first, I'd like to welcome everyone to leave any comments, any questions in the Zoom chat, or if you're joining us on Facebook, you can leave your comments in the comment section there. You can also email us at programs@albemarlehistory.org. And now we'll get to a few announcements. We have a new exhibit at the Historical Society, designed, researched, and curated by the 8th and 9th grade local history class taught by Sally Duncan at the Renaissance School. The exhibit is titled An Educational Look at Childhood in Charlottesville. The exhibit is now open and will be through the end of the year, so please stop by and check it out. Our address is 200 2nd Street Northeast, Charlottesville, Virginia, 22902. Between July 5th and August 31st, Francis Brand's first portraits will be installed at the center at Belvedere. Francis Brand was a folk artist who captured portraits of several notable firsts, including the city's first Black mayor and the first woman to sue to be admitted into UVA as an undergraduate. Brand's work has not been on display in Charlottesville for many years until now. So check us out at the center at Belvedere. July 13th at 7 p.m. You can join us for our next Unregulated Historical Meanderings with Dr. William Kurtz, who will be discussing his research about Black Virginians in Blue, the untold stories of Albemarle County's U.S. colored troops. And there will be much more coming in 2022, so stay tuned. You can check out our Facebook page if you've found that. You can get on our mailing list and go to our website, but keep in touch with us. But I think that's plenty for the announcements for now. Tom, will you please get our program started?
Definitely, Sterling. Thank you very much for those announcements, and definitely come by and take a look at that Renaissance School exhibit. It is a pretty cool exhibit, and we just put it in the hands of the students, and they ran with it. And seeing our youth tackle local history has been great. Lots of history and lots of different perspectives to it. So I want to welcome everyone to our third program, our online program on race and sports in our series here. I'm Tom Chapman. I'm the executive director of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. Now into my third year as the executive director, I'm happy to say we've made some great strides in kind of redefining our mission, figuring out the role of the Historical Society in the 21st century, an even wider audience, addressing historical questions of relevance in today's world, which is of importance for everyone, not only in our local community, but in our larger world around us. Race and sports is just one example of how we're doing that. Since launching this project a little over 1 year ago, our volunteer directors of George Gillum and Phyllis Leffler have carried out about half of the interviews that we've planned for a total of 60 videotape conversations. So we've done almost half of those, or a little over half, I think. Lorenzo Dickerson, our videographer, local filmmaker, and also a local historian by right. Also Annie Valentine, our project coordinator, are very important members of this team, along with interns and volunteers who have given of their time and energy. The interviews explore the lives of individuals who experienced desegregation at local high schools, UVA, with a particular focus on how sports played a role. We will house these interviews in our library. They'll also be on a website that we are currently in the process of planning and getting up and running. Developing that website with a $75,000 grant that we received from the American Historical Association. Preeminent national professional organizations for historians recognized us, so we know something right. Along with grants from the Virginia Humanities, the Perry Foundation, the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, and also many generous private donors. So the work that we are doing is on your behalf because of your funding and your help. So we thank you very much. And we urge you to support our efforts for this and other projects that we are doing. So you can look on our website and learn more about it. You can check out our Facebook and our Twitter pages, and you can get a little feel for what we're doing. So Race and Sports is just one example. It's a very important example, but it's one example of many things we're tackling. So I don't want to talk all night. I know you're all here for main event and listening to some folks who live through an interesting history here in Charlottesville. So I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's program, George Gillum. George will speak a little bit about the importance of this project, and then he's going to tell you about today's program and the guests before we hear about them. So George, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. The Race and Sports Oral History Project is a deep dive into the opportunities that people who were school children in the period 1954 to 1970, right at the period that is known as massive resistance, when the political leadership in Virginia passed laws that had the effect of closing down any school that attempted to desegregate as directed by the U.S. Supreme Court. And there were three large high schools and then some other shorter ones that had students who were athletes, they were cheerleaders, they were school administrators, they were teachers, they were coaches. All of these people had interesting stories on what it was like to go through those difficult years from 1954 to 1970. For some, sport is the great equalizer that allows individual talent and effort to rise above inbred biases around race. For others, sport is another form of exploitation and oppression that has promulgated racial stereotypes and limited opportunity for African Americans. So our project is going to reveal, we think, the complex truths from the simplified myths. We will preserve the stories for generations to come of those in our community who were on the front lines of desegregation. And at the end of our discussion today, we will reserve time for your questions. So feel free to pose them in chat, and we will get to as many as we possibly can a little bit later in the program. Today, I am delighted to be able to introduce two of our interviewees who were among the first to engage in the desegregation process. Garwin DeBerry and Steve Runkle, we're honored to have you here tonight. Garwin DeBerry went to Lane High School and Burley High School in Charlottesville. He was deeply invested in sports and knew that his passion was to play college level football and then to be a football coach. He ended up as the head coach of the football team at Charlottesville High School in 1980. This was particularly ironic because in 1960, when he was a student, he was refused permission to play for the high school that he was attending at that time, Lane. Steve Runkle went to Appomattox High School when his family lived there, and then they moved to Lane High School. And like Garwin, Steve Runkle was also a star athlete with a particular passion for football. He played football for UVA and went on to become a real estate broker and a very highly respected developer of residential property here in the Charlottesville area. I would also like to introduce very quickly Phyllis Leffler, who is along with Annie Valentine and me, we jokingly call ourselves the noisy three or the big three because we've been sort of carrying this project along for the last year. I'd like to have some discussion and consideration in answer to some questions, and I've got about 5 or 6 questions if we don't run out of time. First question is, we have found that neighborhoods in which people were raised up helps to define them. So I'd like to ask Steve and Garwin to tell us something about the neighborhood or the neighborhoods that you came from and what was significant about living in those particular neighborhoods. Garwin, you want to start?
Okay, George. For me, living in Charlottesville was really a unique situation. I grew up on 10th and Page, right down in the middle of the Black community. Everybody in that community were very supportive of everybody. It was like if you went outside and your mom was looking for you, that someone knew where you were. But growing up there was really a great experience for me. You're talking about living outside of the area, coming back, you always realize what a great experience you had growing up. And you tell people about that and they can't believe what a great situation we had here. But, again, I love Charlottesville as well. But everybody, our kids in particular, we grew up together. We all played together. And I think that is what really drove me to become an athlete. I was one of the better kids in the community that could play football, basketball, baseball, whatever the sport was. That was just my drive. I was always told that if you had a talent, use it when you go to school, major in something that you like to be. And being a coach and being influenced by some of my high school coaches really made an impact on me. So I was, again, grew up in an area where all the kids in that area played for Burley. That was our high school. The guys would come around after football games and, of course, sit around on people's porches, and we'd all hang around as little kids and listen to the great stories that they would tell about their games. And we were just itching to become a part of that situation. And for me, in 1960, I had the opportunity to attend Lane. And from there, things kind of began to develop for me.
I should perhaps provide a little bit of context. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court said that schools could not continue to operate on a segregated basis, and that schools that were segregated needed to desegregate. And so between 1954, when the court made that decision, and 1960, Virginia took this very firm position that the schools in Virginia were going to stay segregated. And so that tension was sort of the background music of that entire period that we are looking at. The Charlottesville area had 3 major high schools. The first was Lane High School, which was held in the building that is now the Albemarle County Office Building. And that was for white kids. The second was the Albemarle County High School, which was pretty much in the same area that it is now. And that was for white kids who lived in Albemarle County. And the third was Burley High School, which was located, still is located, the building is still here, in downtown Charlottesville. And that was limited to the African-American kids. So when Garwin decided that he really wanted the academic experience from the Lane High School, when he went and applied for acceptance into the Lane High School student body, it set off a bunch of bells that it started to ring. And the bottom line, which we will get to the bottom line, sort of what happened at that point. Steve, do you want to reflect a little bit on the different experience that you had?
Sure. I moved around a lot. My dad was a highway engineer and moved from about every 5 years from one area for that purpose. And so I was born in Martinsville. I moved to South Boston at age 5 and then to Halifax a year or two later. I moved to Appomattox in 1952. And that's really where I was interested in sports before that, but that's where I really began to develop sports. And I was old enough in school. I was in the 6th grade or something like that when I started. As a matter of fact, I played on the Appomattox Junior Varsity team when I was in 6th grade and 7th grade, and 8th grade. In the 9th grade, I was a quarterback for that the JV team. But so, that relates more to the sports than anything else. But when it becomes, racial issues, there was that only started after we moved to Charlottesville in 1957 in terms of any activity being taken that would require not having segregation.
We have heard from several who were in the same positions as you all were, and it's interesting that the parents of some of the Black children were very concerned about some of the really tough white kids from Belmont, and apparently lots of African-American fathers and mothers said to their kids, "Don't ever go over there near Belmont. Those white kids are dangerous. They don't like us, And then on the other side of town, the 10th and Page district, where so many African Americans lived, which again is still here, the bias was exactly the opposite. They were scared to death of the white kids. The white kids were scared to death of the Black kids. Did you have any of that in your neighborhood?
No, we moved here in 57, as I previously said, and for the first time, my family owned a house, and it was on Cottonwood Road, which is, certainly wasn't it was just a normal, pretty small house. And I would say when we got here that year, I played on the varsity football team at Lane. And we would interact to some extent occasionally there would be people on the team from Lane going to watch Burley play, and we were glad we weren't playing against them. And so that was essentially about the most interaction we had at that point. And I think occasionally there would be some of the players from Burley, watching us play. So that was in 1957. It was before, in 58, of course, and from a sports standpoint or from a football standpoint, we couldn't play any home games. They all had to be played away from home because of potential issues with when integration was obviously going to be happening. So that's,
It's hard for us today to put ourselves in the position that people were in then. I mean, the thinking is so alien today in so many respects. Exclusion was a concern, and it's a theme that keeps appearing in the work that we're doing. Both Black kids and white kids felt that they were being excluded from some activities that they were interested in participating in, or classes they wanted to take, or whatever. But inclusion was also important. And I'm wondering if you all could reflect a little bit on the importance to you of the team of being included in something that you enjoyed and were good at, with particular, I'd like to hear you talk about the coaches that you had and what they meant to you as you were becoming teenagers.
Okay, I could start with that. My high school coach was Coach Clarence Jones. Before him, I didn't play for the Coach Spook Smith, who was a legendary coach in this area for a long, long time. He coached the teams that were undefeated and unscored on during the early Burley days. I came over at Burley in '63, and Coach Jones had become the coach, and he was definitely he was my mentor. My mom is a widower, so I never really had to deal with a father because he was had passed. But he was like a father to me, Coach Jones, and he saw to it that I was in school and in class and doing the things I was supposed to do. Sometimes I kind of got away from him, but usually he was a guy who I had to pay attention to, and he made sure that I was doing the right things. But being at Burley was really every teacher there was really a person that would kind of take you under their wing and make sure you did what you were supposed to do, and wanted to see you be successful. I had one teacher, Mrs. Brown, Lily Mae Brown. She lived right across from the school, was a math teacher. Trigonometry, algebra. She would make sure that I came for extra help during my lunch period. I didn't want to do that, but she was such a tough person and made sure that I did that. But we had a lot of instances of that happening at the school. Everybody took an interest in you and wanted to see you be successful.
Good. What's the legacy of that relationship? When you started coaching, what did you take from your experience with your coach?
I took everything. You emulate someone that's been very positive in your life. And for me, Coach Clarence Jones was that person. I went to college. I went to Virginia State College in Petersburg, and Coach Lawson was my coach there, and Coach Lovett. Coach Lovett was a guy who also coached at Carver of Newport News, and he came into the college ranks while I was there. And I just used everything that I learned from them to be a halfway successful high school coach. It's you can't use it all, but you can use the best parts. But the thing I think most that I learned from those guys was that you had to be a caring guy. You have to treat the kids like they were your own sons, and that you wanted them to be successful. You had to be a role model for them and let them know the right path to follow.
I wonder if I could just interject for a minute. George kindly
Please do.
introduced me at the beginning as the co-director of this project. I wonder if you could share with our audience tonight your experiences at Lane before you transferred back to Burley, because I think that's a really important part of this larger Charlottesville story. You had gone to Jefferson School up through 7th grade. It was a neighborhood Black school where everybody was part of a family.
Yeah.
And in the 8th and 9th grade, you go to Lane.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you could just share with us what you told us in an interview earlier on about what impelled you to even go to Lane, and also what happened to you at Lane.
Okay. Well, Lane, I had no dreams of going to Lane. After leaving Jefferson in the 7th grade, I was all ready to go to Burley. All of our friends were happily and eagerly anticipating being a part of the Burley Bear experience. During the summer, before going to entering the 9th grade, 8th grade, I'm sorry, because high school started in the 8th grade. My mom called me into the living room one evening, and who was sitting with her was Mr. Eugene Williams, who at the time I didn't really know what his role was in the ACP, but he was one of the persons who was trying to integrate schools and start the movement to equalizing things for both races. They let me know that I was one of the kids that they had chosen to enter Lane the next year. And along with 3 or 4 other kids. And again, in my neighborhood, we all kind of lived together. My cousin Adolphus Page lived across the street. And my cousin Val actually lived with me and our family in the house we lived in. And Diane Gardner, who lived again across the street. We all were asked to go to Lane, and all this happened without any preparation or anything. We were like, we're going to Burley. They said, no, we want you guys to go to Lane. And all of us were decent students. We were good students. In fact, all the kids were in our group were very good students. I probably was the worst of the group, but we all decided to go. And our parents were, like, okay, this is something we want you guys to do to help everybody else. The whole race, it wants you guys to go there, do well, and boost us up where we can really integrate the schools a little bit further. But we did that. I think one of the most interesting things was that when we started going, we lived on 10th, Page and 9th. We would go up the street. The Pepsi Cola plant was there now. It's down a restaurant. But all the kids would walk up this hill. I know it'd be 15, 20 of us that would meet at the corner, walk up. And all of a sudden, they would go left toward Rose Hill Drive. And we would have to go right down Preston Avenue to Lane. It was like, wait a minute, what's going on? We should be going with them that way. But we were going the opposite direction, and we went down the Lane, and it was, no one told us anything. We just walked in the door, and luckily Johnny Martin and Donald Martin were already, and French Jackson also were already going. But I'm sure I've left some people out, but they have been taught in offices and classrooms, not in classrooms, but offices and people's places where they weren't allowed to actually go to mingle in the school or be in classrooms with the other kids. But we did that and walked in, and it was quite an experience. We had no friends, of course. every now and then you have someone walk up to you and kind of befriend you a little bit and make you feel a little bit more welcome. But it was quite an experience. But we found out after getting there that we could go to class, but we could not participate in any kind of extracurricular activity. We all were in the band. Since the second grade, we had played instruments at Jefferson and been in the elementary school band. And we could practice. Mr. Sharon Hoos was the band director at the time, great band man. And you can practice, but you cannot perform. You can't play in parades, concerts, halftime, football games, none of that you would be able to do. So we understood that, and we practiced hard, and hopefully things were going to change. Went to try out for team. I asked Mr. Theodos, who was then at the time the head football coach, if I could come out for the team. He said, "No, I don't think we're going to allow you guys to do this. It was not my decision, but it is a decision of the board that if you guys play, no one else would play us." So that meant that we were not allowed to play on any sports teams. We could go to school, but we couldn't play on any teams. But that's just a little bit of what was going on then. And I dealt with that for 2 years, 8th and 9th grade. And I knowing all the time that I was one of the better athletes in my neighborhood and in Charlottesville, in my age group, I couldn't play. And it was, oh man, it really tore me up because I knew the kids that I would go over to Burley on Fridays and watch them play, and knowing that I should be out there with them because I was probably one of the better kids in the city to play, Black kids in the city that would play football. But it was tough. I after 2 years with that, I decided to ask Mom if I could leave Lane and go over to Burley. I hadn't been to Burley yet, but wanted that experience.
We found the letters in the school board's files between your mother and the school officials. And it is clear that you all, your mother and you, had asked if you would be able to play in the band. And they specifically said, yes, you could do that. And after 2 years, when they kept turning you down, you finally said, I want to play the trumpet.
Yeah.
I also want to play football.
Yeah.
So they sent you off. That's when you decided to go back to Burley.
Yeah, it was. That was kind of traumatic. A little bit more about the football. I had an uncle who lived in New Jersey, who was a director of music for Passaic, New Jersey, and he would visit. He and his wife, my aunt, they would come down in the summer, and so he said, "Hold it, let me." He was a very kind of talkative, aggressive kind of a person. He said, "I'm going to take you over to the superintendent's house. We're going to find out where he lives." And at the time it was Mr. Ellis, and he said, "Yes, we're going to find out where he lives, and we're going to go knock on his door and see if he will see us." So we did that. He did see us. We came in, and he gave us that same story about, well, we'd love for those guys to play, but as of now, no one will play us if we have Black kids on the team. So as of now, they won't be allowed to play. But maybe later, a couple of years, that might happen. But that did not happen. Again, that's why I decided to go over to Burley. Getting over to Burley was important because I got a chance to play right away. I started right away. And after playing for a year, in my junior year, which was another year, that's 3 years, they decided to allow Black kids to play. And there were hardly any Black kids there that would play. So George King, who was playing with me at Burley, decided he was going to transfer to Lane. And the Woodfalk twins, who were at Burley, they decided to transfer to Lane. And Paul Scott, who was also there, decided to transfer down to Lane to play. They asked me if I was going to go back, and I said, no, I've made one transition. I'm going to stay exactly where I am and make the best of the situation that I have, and it turned out to be the right decision for me. But those guys went down there and had great careers. They started, all of them started, had a lot of publicity. They were great players and did a great job. But I decided to stay where I was. The band, of course, I never got a chance to do that there, but at Burley, I was able to play in the band. It was a great experience. Mr. Elmer Sampson was a director, and I played two instruments. I played the French horn and the trumpet, and had a great experience. Enjoyed every moment of it. We were probably the toast of the town in parades. Everybody wanted to see the Burley High School band. They always put us last because all the kids on the parade route would follow the band down the street as they marched through the streets of Charlottesville. But it was what an experience that was. I'll never forget that.
Steve, you had a particularly close relationship with your father and went to his work job some, and really had sounds like a very strong relationship. How did your knowledge of a good relationship with a male authority figure, how did that affect you with your relationship with coaches? Did it make you more comfortable with coaches, or what effect did this have on you?
I don't think my relationship with my father, I was close to him. I spent a lot of time with him when I wasn't in school. But I don't think it had any effect on, what you just mentioned. He was born, by the way, in 1895. And my youngest son was born in 1995. So they were 100 years apart. So that's has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I just think it's interesting.
Who was your coach at Lane?
The coach here?
Who was your
Yeah,
coach?
well, when I moved to Charlottesville in '57, it was on the varsity football team. Ralph Main was the head coach, and Tommy Theodos was there during his my junior year, but became the head coach in my senior year, it was the fall of 1959. So, and he was, I think, by far the best coach I had, and Joe Bingler was, the assistant coach, and they. I think because of them, we had the first winning season, and I think since 1952. So it was a 7-year stretch that we weren't on a winning football. I mean, we had won a few games, but we didn't win more than we lost. So they did a really good job of turning us around for that time, and it got even better as time went on.
One very important fact about the football teams of the 50s and 60s in Charlottesville is that Lane High School team got turned around, and for 5 years they were never beaten. They were tied a few times, but they were undefeated for 5 years.
Yeah.
And at Burley, one of Burley's seasons was even more spectacular in that they never lost a game, they were never tied, and they were never scored upon.
That's all due to Garwin.
No.
But what the effect that this seemed to have, and I'd like you all to speak to this, was that one of the things that God-fearing, good people who had children playing football worried about if they desegregated, then some of the good white players would lose their starting position to some black kid who came over from Burley. And it worked the same way the other way too. So how did that, did this become really part of the culture of these schools, their football record?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you said, I mean, you know, as there became more black kids playing at Lane at the time, there would be some white kids that didn't get as much play as they had been getting potentially in the past. But you know, I was a little before Garwin. I think I'm 5 years older than he is, and so I got here and played in 57, 58, and 59 on the football team and other teams. And the issues we had then in 57, everything was fine. We had home and away games. In 58, because the first half of 58, you know, we didn't go to Lane High School. We went to various churches and other places for school. I went to the Greek church for 6 hours a day for physics, as an example. So, and we couldn't play any home games in 1958. So we had to play all the games we played away from home, which made things a little tougher.
I heard the story of one of the judges in town who was very interested in sports and had been known to close trials down early in the afternoon so he could go to watch Lane's football team. And somebody said to him at one point, "Judge, you need to go to look at Burley. Burley's really got some football players." And so he said, "Well, okay, I'll go." And the judge was known to not be a person he was not on the front lines of desegregation. And he arrived early with several of his friends, and they walked down and they got seats right on the 50-yard line. Well, just before kickoff, a teacher from Burley came up and tapped the judge on the shoulder and said, "Judge, you're sitting in 50-yard line seats. These are for black people. White people can go down to the end zone and watch." And darned if the judge didn't get up and walk with his friends down to the end zone and told the story. So that it was important.
George, just to interject, you were talking about Judge at the game. Every Friday night, there would be UVA students with their shirts and ties filling up the stands on the far side of their football field to watch the games. So it had gotten around that Burley had one of the better teams in the state, and everybody wanted to see them play, and they came out to see them play.
In 1967, Burley School was finally closed, totally desegregated, and the students the African-American students who had been educated at Burley now were basically divided between Lane and Albemarle High School. And the preponderance went to Lane. A smaller number went to Albemarle High School because that's just the way the population was. So after the beginning of 1967, no new students could go to Burley. None could have that experience. And very quickly, the culture of the Black community to the extent that it was tied up in with football and other sports. That could not be repeated. And nobody had the experience, Garwin, that you did, because nobody else could turn around and say, I'm going to go back to Burley.
That's right.
That door was closed.
Yeah, that door was closed.
And this had repercussions all the way through this. Could you reflect a little bit more on what it felt like at Lane during the 1960s?
Well, again, we were not supposed to be there. We didn't have a lot of friends. We weren't welcomed, really. We had situations there where there was really no outward violence, as you would say. You would think would happen, but there was none. I know of several incidents where we were walking. You could be walking up the steps, and someone would grab your foot real quick, and you would stumble on the steps, and you look around, and everybody's looking away. There was the bottom floor, the basement floor at Lane had windows that opened to the courtyard. And whenever it snowed, we were very, very apprehensive about walking down that hallway because we knew the guys were going to grab a handful of snow and make snowballs and whistle them at your head as you passed by. And when that happened, you again turn around and everybody was talking to each other. They had no idea what had happened. But those kind of things happened. And we'd go in the cafeteria to eat lunch. And of course, we sat together as a group, and we were like a little island around in the sea because all the white kids sat around us. But every now and then you'd have a big apple plop in the middle of your table, banana, grapes were thrown at you, all those kinds of things were happening. And just an idea of what kind of happened during that time.
We have a question or comment that came in. It says, I'm a friend of Garwin's from Virginia State and lived in Norfolk during the days of Virginia's massive resistance to school desegregation. The injustices to us Black Americans has been traumatizing in ways we couldn't even comprehend at the time. I'm gratified these stories are coming to light. And what would you say, Garwin, is the legacy in your life, in your mind, of your experience, sort of in the leading edge of this battle?
Well, I just think at the time I did what I was asked to do. I feel good about doing it. I think we persevered, and my story is one which I would, hopefully will be an example for someone else. I couldn't play for a school, went away, left, came back, went to college, got a degree. When I first came back to Charlottesville, there were no jobs at that time. So it took me until 1973 to get back to Charlottesville and become a member of the staff at Lane. It was Lane at the time, and worked with Tommy Theodos and Joe Bingler for like 7 years. And Tommy became the athletic director, and there was a lot of talk about who would be the next football coach. And I applied, and Dr. Eleanor was superintendent at the time, and he felt it was the right time to have a Black coach, football coach. And he took a chance on me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I did a decent job. I don't think I did a great job, but I did a decent job. And I hope that I was an example for somebody. That's all I hope.
Steve?
Yeah.
How do you, reflecting back on those days, how do you did you have the same experience that Garwin had in terms of witnessing some rough behavior and figuring out a way to deal with it?
Well, my senior year, there were all, there wasn't, I mean, it was integrated, but it was not much integration. I mean, it was maybe 4 kids, relatively young, and early, not seniors or juniors. And yeah, I was asked to keep an eye on things, and I'm sure a few other people that were friends of mine were asked the same thing. If anybody was doing something they shouldn't be doing, to the 4 Black kids there, that have something to say about it. And I think, I don't think it ever got into a brawl anywhere or anything like that. But I know I did, and I know a couple of other people did, said, hey, cool it, basically, let this person alone, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you were able to talk people into improved behavior most of the time.
Yeah, but I don't think that, we were 100% successful in that. But I mean, that if they didn't see us, the 3 or 4 or 5 of us that were asked to do that,
What would
if we
you
weren't
do?
around, they might have.
What would you
A
do
little
if you heard a student using the N-word?
I never heard anybody, do that, which again, doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I never heard it in my presence.
Well, you were one of the student leaders, and it's, I think, to be expected that people would clean up their act when you appeared.
Well, probably a little bit, yeah, but it was also, between classes, it was pretty crowded. And people were moving one room to another, and the halls were full. And so, to know, it's hard to know exactly what was said unless you were very close by.
What were some of your leadership positions besides the star of the football team? What were some of the other reasons that people viewed you as a leader?
I don't really know. I think a lot of that, and it probably was true of Garwin as well. I mean, a lot of it had to do with, I played football, ran track, played basketball, wasn't very good, played baseball. I think it just because that I was one of the people there or students there that was pretty athletic. And I think that had an influence on that. I think that whether it made any sense or not, there were a lot of kids that would
Let me ask
respect that.
my colleague Phyllis Leffler if she wants to weigh in at this point.
Okay.
Well, sure. I could ask you, Mr. Runkle, a bit of a follow-up to that, because again, I know that in your interview with George, you spoke a bit about the role of your mother as a teacher in the Appomattox school system and how you felt that influenced some of your views about integration and whether that was a good thing or not a good thing. And I wonder if that sort of became somewhat known or not, but whether that would have had something to do with your being. And I also wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you said you were sort of asked to play this role. Could you tell us a little bit about who asked you to play that role? Do you remember anything about that?
Well,
or
I think it was the
did you
principal at the
just-
time.
The principal at the time
Uh-huh,
asked you to do that.
uh-huh.
And he kind of said to you, so if you see anything going on in the halls, could you just kind of tell people to cool it or stuff like that? Is that-
Yeah, and there are a couple of friends of mine who are no longer alive, unfortunately, but that were, they were on the student council, and there's a couple of the main people there and stuff like that. So I think that, they were given the same information, I believe, from the principal.
Well, that's really good to know, in part because a lot of what we've been told in the other interviews we've done, and it's not really inconsistent, but that students really had no preparation, that no one really spoke to either white students or Black students about this changed environment based on the desegregation of schools.
Well, I don't know how many of the white kids, including myself, were, but yeah, but I'm sure that there were at least a few that did get that, have that conversation.
Uh-huh. I think that's somewhat good to know. So I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to be running out of time, and I would love to hear you both reflect on where you think we are in terms of race relations today, whether you feel like we've made progress since those very difficult early days, or just where we are as a society.
I will, I think we're better, and part of the reason, but we still have a good long ways to go, I think. But my youngest son, who went to high school at Charlottesville High School, had many Black friends, played on sports teams and interacted. He went to Dartmouth to college. He lived with several Black kids from time to time. He got recommended by some of the Black kids that he lived with for awards given by Dartmouth. So I don't think that would have happened, in 1930 or 40. So that's one measure.
Or 60 or
Yeah,
19.
or 60, yes.
Right.
And he's, he currently lives in California. And in his junior year and senior year, or his junior year at Dartmouth, he worked in California for 2 years before he graduated. He lived with Black kids there. And he was typically the person who got the apartment and negotiated it and then brought the Black kids with him. So I don't know how prevalent that is, but it's, to me, it's saying things are turning a little bit, at least.
Garwin?
Well, if you would tell me 60 years ago, really about 60 years ago when I entered the lane, things were not very good. But you can look at my story and tell that things have gotten better. I don't think I would have been able to be a high school football coach in a town like Charlottesville had things not changed a bit. I've got some great white friends. Some of my best friends are white guys and white women. We're always kind of trying to get together and do things. And what I always tell people is that, seeing things the way they are today, the political climate, it's getting strange. It seems as though we're going back in time. I hope that's not the case, but I think it's in the case that everyone, white and Black, needs to look inside themselves and change their hearts and realize that everybody is equal. Everybody should be loved. Everybody should be given a fair chance. And, we can march and do all that and protest. And until we change some hearts and minds, I don't see it ever changing. Here we are 60 years later from when I entered Lane, and it's the same thing. I mean, some people have changed their views, but there's still that little element that has not changed. And until that happens, I don't see a big difference.
Let me ask our colleague, Annie Valentine, who does a lot of the research on people we're talking to, ask her if she wants to weigh in as we get ready to close up.
Well, I want to add that there's been some amazing comments in the chat box talking about how much courage and resilience that Garwin has, and just really appreciating what he's done and the example that he's set, and that's incredibly special. And so I wanted to maybe read Jerome Selden's comment to us, but I'm sure you can all see. He says, Mr. DeBerry, I did not experience what you experienced because the changes took place 7 years after I graduated from high school. As an African-American from North Carolina, I applaud you for your great accomplishments and how you did not give up. Thank you, you're a great man. So I think this sentiment of courage and the wisdom that you two have shared with us tonight about what it was like and how things have changed, and the things that helped you all cope, and the things that you all learned and have carried forward in your hearts. I think those are incredible things that you've left us with tonight. So thank you so much, both of you.
Excuse me, Annie.
Yeah.
My name is Jerome, but I'm a female.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It happens all the time.
Thank you for sharing. That's a beautiful comment. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We will look forward to seeing you all at the next event.
Thank you. Steve, take care.
Hey, Garwin, we
Okay,
need
if
to get together, buddy.
Yes, we need to.
Yeah.
Like that.
Can we turn this back to?
Okay, thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And I wanted to kind of follow up. I think Shelley Murphy was asking a question here about, I think she was talking about you, Garwin, with the discussion at home with your parents about the decision to go to Lane. Like, have you recorded that? Have you passed that down to your family? Do they understand, the trials and the tribulations you went through just trying to get an education?
Well, my daughter is typing in here every now and then. She's in Maryland, and she got to see this. But I with my parents, yeah, we had a lot of convo about all the school stuff and growing up, watching what you do, being responsible, and that kind of thing. But I always said, when I got to be an adult and have my kids, I wanted them all to be able to do whatever every other kid was doing, white, black, whoever. And we talked about things, but not to the extent that a conversation like this has presented us with the opportunity to do. So I know my daughter and son are watching this. I talked to them today. So they can talk to their kids about what their grandfather and their father and grandfather has had to endure, and how he's persevered and got through it. And hopefully that's an example for them as well.
Well, thank you, sir. And I guess it could also be applied to Steve too, in terms of the impact of your parents. It seems like your dad and your mom had a very strong influence on you, enough so that maybe the principal of your high school looks to you to say, hey, keep these in line going down the hallway. Okay, can you do that for me? That's a great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. I want to say that it's been great to hear these stories, great to understand more about what you all experienced in our local history here. I think chiming along with Mr. DeBerry to not want it to happen, but kind of looking at our current environment of thinking that we might be backtracking. But I think in some ways these types of projects and the stories that we can tell and bringing light to this history that maybe we haven't shined a light on the past 60 years.
Yes.
Maybe that there's a give and a take there in terms of
Yeah.
these get to light, and we have to hear and understand them and maybe learn from them. So I'm hoping we're not backtracking. I'm hoping it's just a necessary step towards progress.
Yes.
Well, Sterling, is there anything else we need to cover, or shall we wrap this up and let people go have a little evening of their own?
I don't see any other questions out there. So I would just say before we go, if anyone has any suggestions about any programs we do in the future, you can email me at programs@albemarlehistory.org. Our online programs are brought to you by the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society and our wonderful supporters, just like each and every one of you who joined us tonight. If you are not a Historical Society member, please consider joining. Your donation supports our mission to collect, preserve, and interpret local history as a commitment to inform, inspire, and create new understandings that unveil the past, enlighten the present, and hopefully foster a more inclusive history for the future. You can visit our website, albemarlehistory.org, and become a member, support us with a donation, or check out what we're going to be doing in the future. So thanks again, Garwin DeBerry. Thanks, Steve Runkle, for joining us today. And thanks to everyone out there on the thanks who joined us tonight. Thanks to our race and sports team. And thanks to everyone. I'm Sterling Howell here with Tom Chapman and the rest of the team. Go ahead, Tom.
Everyone have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Thanks.
job, Dad.
All right, Lee.
Good job, Dad. I love that.
All right, G.
All right, good job.
Love
Okay.
the view,
Marilyn.
Mr. Daniel. That's a great view behind you.
Good night.
Good night.